Thank you, Bill. That was great. Thank you so much. And good morning and welcome to Unity of Orange County. It's so nice to see everybody here today. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Before we get started, I always like to talk about our vision and mission statement. So our vision statement, centered in divine love, we joyfully co-create a world that works for all. And our mission statement, to awaken, inspire, and transform lives. And before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge those that helped make this service possible. Bill on piano, Tom on audio, Waverly streaming, John on camera, and Reverend Allison will do the daily word and guide us through our meditation today. And a big thank you to Mark Sautel, who just did a wonderful job on our fellowship last week. So we will be looking forward to another one soon. And we have a few announcements today. Classes, All Things Metaphysical with Reverend Annie are on Mondays from 1 to 3. And the materials in this series will help you climb out of the attic of your own My True Self. In this workshop series, we will share ideas, insights, and metaphysical principles that are designed to awaken you to the reality that exists beyond the physical senses, and how you access this information that can be empowering today. Today at 11:45 will be the spiritual discussion group, The Quest. And of course, these are all on Zoom. We have a new class starting on Wednesdays from 6:30 to 8, beginning this Wednesday, May the 5th. The book is The Intuitive Way by Penny Pierce. This is the definitive guide to increasing awareness. A renowned intuitive and visionary shows you how to know what you need to know just when you need to know it. That sounds like a great one. And Creativity as a Spiritual Path will meet the fourth Thursday in May, which is the 27th, from 6:30 to 8. Our Zoom ID is 818-8859-3747. And for a full listing of all of our upcoming activities, please go to our website, unityoforangecounty.org, and go to our calendar. So that is what we have for announcements for today. So I'd like to invite Reverend Allison up for daily word and meditation.
Good morning. The daily word for today, May 2nd, 2021, grace. The grace of God is alive in me. I don't need to do anything to earn or deserve the grace of God because it is always present and is mine to claim in any situation. Grace dawns in my awareness as soon as I move beyond the limits of my human understanding. I let go and I let the peace, love, wisdom, and strength of God fill me, lift me, and guide me. In both the challenging and the ordinary moments of my life, the grace I give and the grace I receive keep the awareness of God in my heart. During a tough conversation, a thought comes to mind that helps me reestablish harmony. As I mull an important decision, a fresh insight clarifies my thinking. Feeling overwhelmed with my to-do list, I feel renewed energy and move forward with strength and guidance and enthusiasm. And in these moments and more, I discover grace anew. And scripture today is John 1, chapter 16. From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. And now I invite you to get ready for our meditation. Find a comfortable place, preferably with your feet on the floor. And just close your eyes and begin your breathing. And center your awareness then in that breathing as you breathe in and out. And let us envision for a moment that we are joining with people all around the world at this moment who are meditating as well and being in the quiet and the stillness. Because we take a moment and we recognize that we are all one. So we can rejoice in that power and that presence that is within each and every one of us. So let's prepare our hearts and our minds to enter into the awareness of the oneness in this sacred time of quiet. Let's begin by releasing any thoughts about our busyness in our life. Let go of any activity that you've been involved in. And just for this moment, right here and right now, be fully present. Let go of worry and judgment. Just let it slip away and center yourself in the peace. As we do so, we become more relaxed and we are soothed by the powerful presence of peace which is flowing through us now. So let's take a moment to experience that peace in the silence. And from this quiet space within, we have a clear meaning of our life and our purpose. And we recognize the infinite possibilities, the ones for good in our life. And we know that this good is unfolding right here and right now. We can be confident that we are divinely guided to our higher good at each moment. And each step that we take leads us to a greater expression of love and of harmony. We can be assured that the path is smooth and easy, and that our light is illumined along the way as we rest in this awareness. Let us take a moment and recognize the body temple and know that we need to care for this temple with love and respect. We allow the divine intelligence to bring forth healing and vitality. And as we take a moment then to affirm that wholeness and perfect health, every part of our body is filled with energy and thoughts of renewal. And every cell of my being is renewed in this moment. In this moment, my mind is filled with new ideas and new opportunities to express wonderful and great abundance in all areas of our lives. The power within is bringing good to me and to those I love. And my heart is overflowing with gratitude for this beauty and goodness that is all around me. The more I look for good, the more I find it. As I allow this appreciation to flow throughout my being, I give thanks in the silence. We have taken this time to go within, and it has renewed and filled us with peace. We now radiate peace from our hearts and into this room. We imagine a peaceful heart beating in rhythm with others all around the world. And as our hearts beat together, God's love is flowing through us. One by one, we are creating a world of peace and a world of harmony. And we recognize this as we spend a moment in the silence. And now as we slowly begin to return our awareness back to our physical surroundings, we know that when we leave this place, we carry the presence of God within us. And that any time we can recall this peace as we go about our lives and activities. All will be done in peace and order. Our lives have begun in this moment. We are living now, loving, breathing power of the presence that moves in the world as peace. Namaste.
Thank you, Bill. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. So today we're going to talk about something kind of leading up from what we've been talking about last week. Last week we talked about the fact that we were powerless over anything outside of ourselves, that we couldn't change people, places, things, circumstance, the weather, and that the only thing we had power over was ourselves. And then we talked about the fact that we had to surrender what we couldn't change to God, that only God, we had to let go of the things that we had no control over. But there is something that we can change, and we mentioned it a little bit, and what we can change is ourselves. Leo Tolstoy, of all people, wrote, "Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself." Right? The problem is always out there. If everyone would just do what we wanted them to do, everything would be fine, right? And then we would be happy, and life would be good, and all would be well. And of course, that isn't how it works at all. And Jesus told us this. He said, and no one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skin bursts, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved. That was in Matthew 9:16 and 17. So back in Jesus' time, they didn't have bottles or cans. And so if you wanted your wine, you drank it in wineskin. They actually took these skins. And what he's saying is that once it was used, you couldn't use it again. So if you had your wine in your wineskin and you were out having a good time and partying and everything else, and then you wanted more wine, and a friend of yours said, oh, share my wine, let me put some of my wine into your wine. If they put it in that old wineskin, it would burst. That they had to have a new wineskin. And so what he's trying to tell us here is that we cannot put new thoughts, new consciousness into our old brains. So if your life isn't going the way you want it to go, it could be anything. It could be a financial issue, relationship issue. It could be the fact that you don't like the weather today, or whatever is going on in your life. In order to change that, it's not so much changing the outside, it's changing our side, inside, our consciousness. That we can't take new ideas that someone is trying to give us and put it into our old minds. It just doesn't work. I mean, think about it a minute. We were talking about this right before. If you've been brought up in an environment where maybe everybody was negative, and so you were kind of like me, you were brought up where, stuff could happen at will. If something could go wrong, it will. And so always expect that something wrong is going to happen. Always expect the worst, and then you're never, my mother taught me this, always expect the worst, and then you're never going to be disappointed. Well, guess what happens? When you always expect the worst happens. She said it like the reverse. If you expect the worst, but the truth of the matter is, I expected the worst, and so the worst always happened. Nothing good ever happened to me. And I will tell you that. I would tell you that. I would go on and on about how nothing good ever happens to me. I never could see the glass half full. Never. The glass was always half empty. And so what happened was I had to, in order to change that thinking and start to think positively, I couldn't wish it on myself. I couldn't say, oh, please, give me new thinking. I wouldn't even think to ask for new thinking. It was beyond my comprehension that I could possibly think anything different than what I was thinking. But what happened was that eventually life got so bad and it was so difficult that I surrendered. What we talked about last week, I surrendered. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't take it. And even though I didn't believe in a God, I surrendered. And then I had this experience. And I came to believe in this power that was greater than myself. And I continued to surrender to that. And that willingness to think differently, that willingness to be able to see maybe that something is different than what I had been thinking about it, opened up a new world, which was unity. And unity is a new thought movement, along with Center for Spiritual Living, Church of Religious Science. All of these are new thought meanings. What it is it's new thinking. Because what happened was, before all these new thought movements happened, we had Christianity, whether it be Catholicism or Lutheran or Methodist or whatever, and they all kind of thought the same way. Different aspects of it, but it was the same way. And then all of a sudden, this new idea comes into being that maybe we just could make a difference in our own world by thinking differently. Wow, what a conception. I can change my world by changing the way I think? You mean I don't have to go and say 20 Hail Marys, or I don't have to starve during, Yom Kippur because, to get rid of my sins. I don't have to do all this. All that I have to do is to change the way I think, to introduce into my life some new ideas. And when these ideas are introduced into my life, something happens. The world doesn't change, but I change. And when I change, I look at the world differently. And all of a sudden, everything that bad can happen doesn't happen in my life. And all of a sudden, things are happening, and I'm going, wow, how did that happen? How did I just needed this, and then all of a sudden that appeared? Or maybe I was introduced to someone who introduced some new ideas to me. I used to give a girl, when I first got into 12-step program, I was giving someone a ride to meetings, and because she didn't have a license, a lot of people in recovery don't have their license, and so I was giving her a ride, and we start talking. And she says, I mentioned, oh, I heard about this author, Emmett Fox, and this book, Sermon on the Mount. And I've started to read it, and it's interesting. It's like this new way first of all, Sermon on the Mount, I figured it was Christian, but it was nothing what I had thought it was going to be. And then we started talking, and she started introducing me to all these other books by Emmett Fox. And I started reading them, I couldn't get enough of them. And it was such a different way to look at things. I mean, he was talking about looking at things positively and creating the life that you want by the thoughts that we think. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, and I couldn't get enough. And then she said to me, well, come with me to Unity. This church I go to, and I don't go to church, I told her. I'm sorry. I'm not going. I don't want to see the cross. I don't want to see anything like that. And she goes, oh, we meet in a Jewish synagogue. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that, So we could walk in, and this minister is talking, and all of a sudden it's like, she's talking Emmett Fox. The same kind of thinking that I was reading at Emmett Fox. And I was like, wow, there are people out there who believe this stuff beside me and my friend in the car, and all of a sudden I realized that and I became, thrilled. I just couldn't get enough of Unity, but because all of a sudden it made me realize that I did have some control over my life because I could change the way I thought. And when I change the way I think, I change my life. It's amazing what happens. The more negative we get, the more negative we become. The more negative we become, the more negative things happen to us. And so there are many things we can do to change our thinking. One is like the class, The Quest. So The Quest is a great class. I don't know how many of you are in it or reading the book. But the thing about The Quest is The Quest takes you through all these new thoughts a little at a time. Because what happens is sometimes we get these new thoughts and they really just come in and they overpower us. And we have a thing called chemicalization. So we lived in an RV, and we couldn't put things like Drano in the drains because the pipes are whatever they're made of. So when the pipe would get stuffed, you would take baking soda and vinegar, and you would put them in together, and then all of a sudden this thing would go bubble, 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 bubble. Meanwhile it's bubbling in the pipe, and it's cleaning out the pipe, and it's like all this stuff is happening. And that's what chemicalization is within us. When we take a lot of new ideas into us and they kind of react to the old ideas, like for instance, the idea of gratitude is an action, and we mix it in with the fact that we think that nothing ever good happens to us, it goes and everything kind of breaks apart, and hopefully what comes out is a clean drain, which is a clean idea that gratitude does work. So this chemicalization is something that happens when we throw a lot of ideas in us. But if we gradually introduce ideas, like in a class like The Quest, or in a 12-step program, or anything like that, what happens is we slowly build up one idea onto the other, and that chemicalization isn't so intense. The dirtier the drain is, the more that stuff happens. The more we have garbage in our thinking, And we put in new thought, the more turmoil there is as we're changing from one to the other. But the important thing is whether we do it gradually or whether we do it all at once, to have that change of thinking. Everyone here is because at some point in their life, they thought, something isn't working right in my life. You know, nobody comes in to something like New Thought or recovery or anything like that because everything is going great in their life. You know, my life is wonderful. The world is great. I don't have a single problem. I have nothing better to do but walk into this Unity Church or wherever and do this stuff, which isn't easy. It isn't easy to look within when things aren't going well without. You know, we want to fix things on the outside because the outside is easy. We don't want to fix the stuff on the inside. But the change happens within. The change in the butterfly is within it. The change in anything is within it. And sometimes we have to go within to find that. So in the quest, they use an example of something about putting, the seeds. They put the seeds in the bag and they kept it in the dark and then it develops. Well, when I was living in Kansas City, when I was in school, I was growing wheatgrass. So I don't know if you know anything about wheatgrass or sprouts or anything like that, but it's in a cold climate. You know, it's Kansas City, it's wintertime, but we had a basement, it was an old house, and I used to sprout my wheatgrass in this dark basement and keep it covered and all of that. And the secret to wheatgrass is keeping it in that dark and letting it do all that internal work. Within the seed is the grass. Within the seed is what we're looking for. Within the seed of us is what we're looking for. Those new ideas, that new thought, that new way of looking at something, instead of looking at it negatively, looking at it positively. And so we have to go within. We have to go within. We have to spend time in prayer and in meditation. We have to be doing things that work on the inside of us. And maybe people can't see that stuff, but we're working on it. And so one thing we can do is gratitude. You know, gratitude is such a positive thing. We have that gratitude circle here that meets once a month. And when you're in that space of trying to change your thinking, one thing to do is gratitude. So a few weeks ago, I shared I was having a really bad dark night of the soul kind of time in my life. Because, you know, one thing about New Thought and when we change our minds, it doesn't always go perfectly. It would be nice if it did, right? It would be nice if you walked into a Unity church and you got that aha. You know, you knew. You had been listening to the truth. You knew it. You're going to go out there and life is going to be perfect. And it is. But every once in a while, you get a bump in the road or something doesn't seem right. So there's two things you can do. You can stay in that and go back to that old thinking like, well, of course it happened because everything bad happens to me. Why wouldn't it happen? Or you can see like what you have to be grateful for. Now, I shared this a couple of weeks. I was going into my physical therapist one day feeling sorry about my foot, and there's a guy without a leg. Remember that expression? I don't know if you ever heard about it. My mother used to tell me, she said, you know, you complain that you have no shoes until you see a man that has no feet. And that's what gratitude does. Gratitude reminds us of what we have instead of looking at what we don't have. That is New Thought. That is the way we change our minds, is we look for other ways to think. And we don't allow ourselves to get too far in that old thinking because that wineskin is stretching when trying to put stuff in that old thing and it's going to burst. And burst means we start to have big problems. So Mother Teresa said, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. You see, the way we change the world, our world, is we change our thinking. We can't change the world out there. We can only change the way we see the world, the way we react to the world, the way we think inside of us. Folks, the answer is not out there. I know I've been looking all my life. I have to tell you, I made I should have gotten a doctorate in studying things on the outside that might make me feel better. If there was anything at all out there that someone said might make me feel better, I've tried it. And I've tried it more than once. And I'm telling you, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The money, houses, relationships, jobs, changing all that stuff on the outside doesn't work. It only works when we start working on changing ourselves. So if you want a different life, you have to think differently. If you want a different life, you can't work on your life, you have to work on your minds. You have to change the way you think, because that is where the growth is. That is where the change is. That is where all of the wonderful things you want to see in your life happen. And if something happens that isn't wonderful, guess what? If you change your mind, you look at it differently. It doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means you're not letting it, send you off to bed for the next 6 months with the door locked and the windows drawn because this terrible thing happened. You find a way to accept it. You find a way to look at it differently. And maybe you find a way to react to it differently. And then your world really starts changing. And it starts changing faster and faster. And you begin to see all the gifts that happen in this. So we have to remember that we need to work on changing ourselves. If you're in a relationship that's not working, don't try and change the other person. It doesn't work. Because if you figured out how to make it work, let me know. Because we're going to write a book together and make a lot of money. I can only change myself in that relationship. I'm the only person in the relationship that I can change. And what happens is when I change, the other person changes. There was a story of a psychiatrist, and this guy comes into the psychiatrist, and he says, my wife is the worst wife in the world. I want to get a divorce. She doesn't do anything right. She doesn't do anything I ask her. She's always giving me arguments. She's always creating problems. I'm going to get a divorce. And the psychiatrist goes, well, that's good. That's a good idea. If she's that bad, you probably should divorce her. But I'll tell you what, before you divorce her, why not do something really nasty? And what you do is you start treating her really well. No matter what she does to you, you treat her well. You tell her you love her. You send her flowers. You do things for her. You're going to drive her crazy if you do that. I guarantee you. So the guy thinks, oh, this is good. This is a good way to get back to my wife. So he goes home and he starts doing that. He starts really treating this wife great, talking to her nice and doing all kinds of stuff. And then some weeks pass and he goes back into the psychiatrist's office and the psychiatrist says, so, did you get a divorce? And he said, divorce? Why would I get a divorce? I am married to the best woman in the whole world. She's the most fabulous wife. Why would I divorce her? Well, what happened? The wife didn't change, right? So we have to do that ourselves. So close your eyes for a moment. And think about something going on in your life that may not be perfect. And ask yourself this question. What can I do differently? How can I see this differently? How can I react differently? What can I do to help me on this path, whether it be a class or a program? Who are people that will aid me along this way? Who will be a good ally in these changes? But most of all, ask God this. What in my consciousness, what in my thinking do I need to change? Maybe it's an assumption. Or something we may have heard when we were children. But know this, God has planted a seed within us. And even though it is in the darkness of our very being, It is a seed that grows and nurtures us and helps us develop into all that we were created to be. But we have to give that seed the nourishment of consciousness to know that all things are possible with God and through us. Everything we need, we already have. All we need are new eyes to see it and a new mind to believe it. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Bill. That was beautiful. Thank you, Reverend Arlene. That was a very great message, something I needed to hear today. At Unity, we believe in 5 basic principles. And our first one is God is all good and active in everything, everywhere. 2, I am naturally good because God's divinity is in me and in everyone. 3, I create my experiences by what I choose to think and what I feel and believe. 4, through affirmative prayer and meditation, I connect with God and bring out the good in my life. And 5, I do and give my best by living the truth that I know I make a difference. And we also believe in the principle of giving and receiving. And here at Unity of Orange County, we have several ways that you can give. And one of them is, of course, that you could mail in your check. And also, if you like, we have our donation box right outside as you're leaving. And you could go to our website at that www.unityoforangecounty.org, and we will have a donate button there where you can donate as well. And either way, we appreciate all of the donations that come in so that we can keep our ministry running. So let us put our hands together and just envision all of the donations that have come in. And together, let us bless our donations by saying, Divine love, through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. So thank you everyone for attending today and tuning in. And so have a great week. Let us have our prayer of protection. Together, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Yea, God. Thank you and have a wonderful week.